Hello, this is Mike. You may call me a rail fan, a foamer, a ferroequinologist, or like the channel name, Locomaniac. In any case, I love trains and I have for as long as I can remember. I live in Ohio, and of course, the big rail fan news lately is that Union Pacific Big Boy number 4014 is going to be coming through twice, in fact, over the summer on its first trip east of Chicago since the locomotive was built. I've seen a lot of posts online from rail fans who say they intend to chase 4014 between Fort Wayne, Indiana, and Bellevue, Ohio on Saturday, June the 6th. This particular leg of the trip is seen as ideal for a lot of different reasons. One, Ohio Route 613 parallels the tracks from the Indiana Ohio line all the way to Fostoria, usually on the south side of the tracks, perfect for videography, and many times right next to the tracks, which would be perfect for pacing shots. Even better, on that leg of the trip, the train will be heading eastbound out of Fort Wayne, so the morning sun will be right on the nose of the locomotive. Again, perfect for photography and videography. Plus, the big boy will be making two whistle stops on this leg, one at Continental, Ohio, and a second at Astoria at the Rail Park, which is one of the premier railfan parks in the United States. So, what could possibly go wrong? First, consider the crowds. Between America's semi-quincentennial and the proposed Union Pacific Norfolk Southern merger, the two railroads have been willing to spend millions of dollars required to arrange for all of the logistics involved in the trip this year. The combination of factors is not likely to happen again anytime soon, and so this is probably a true once in a lifetime opportunity to see the big boy come this far east. As such, rail fans will be coming from all over the country to catch this once in a lifetime event, not just the regional rail fans who show up for most steam powered trips. So if you have chased 765, for example, at the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic or on one of his Indiana trips, take that railfan crowd and multiply probably by a factor of 10 or 20 the number of railfans who are going to descend on the area to chase 4014. Second, both UP and NS have spent a lot of public relations capital informing the general public about the event. For many of the small towns along the route, this may be the biggest thing ever to happen ever since the founding of the town. And so people who normally just sit at crossings and curse the trains as they go by are going to come out to see the big locomotive in the once in a lifetime event. I chased 4014 through Illinois in 2024, and I can say that, for example, between Momence and Watseka, Illinois, a line of cars that were chasing behind 4014 was 3 to 5 miles long. Now, let's take a look at the highway itself. Ohio 613 is a two-lane road, but it is also one of the main routes into and out of Fort Wayne. So, despite its modest appearance, it is a very well-traveled highway, including with semi-truck traffic. Looking at Google Maps, you may see some areas that look from the satellite photos like nice wide pull-offs and good places to stop and take photography. But keep in mind that this area of Ohio was once the Great Black Swamp, and what appears to be those gentle pull-offs in the satellite photos are often actually 8 to 12 foot drainage ditches that were put there to help keep the water from coming back. Now, also consider the typical railfan behavior. If you're shooting video, what is the prime video location? Well, it's right next to the locomotive for pacing shots. Now, while 613 does follow the tracks for quite a ways, remember that the locomotive is only going to be traveling 35 to 40 miles an hour. And those 2 or 3, maybe 4 cars at the front of the line are not going to want to relinquish that position. And with 3 miles of cars behind them and oncoming semi-traffic, passing these folks is going to be nearly an impossible task. And then there's the Iron Triangle Railfan Park itself in Fostoria. First, let me say I love this place and I go as often as I can. On a typical summer day, you can see lots of NS and CSX action, and there's plenty of room for 50 or 100 or so rail fans to spread out and get photos without having other folks in the way. But 1,000 people? 2,000? More? Now, the fine folks who operate the park, they know what's coming, and they are making preparations to provide additional parking and additional restroom facilities and such to the park for the large crowd that is coming. But there's only so much space in the park, and with the crowd, of course, surging towards the Norfolk southern side, the crowd would become that much more compressed with everyone fighting for a good place to stand and shoot while the big boy is parked there at the Railfan Park. Then, when it's time for all of these folks to leave the park, there's only one exit, and it's onto a secondary street with no traffic light. By the time you get out of the park and back on the road, 4014 will be halfway to Bellevue before you even get out of the parking lot. My advice is if you want to see 4014 up close and personal, either come very early and plan to get no other shots of the big boy that day. Oh, by the way, overnight camping is prohibited in the park. Or skip the park altogether and instead attend the public display of 4014 when it comes back through Fostoria in July. Again, plan to be there early because based on results from 2024 in Illinois, you can expect 50 to 100,000 of your Railfan neighbors to show up for the public display. So, when Saturday, June 6th arrives and 4014 comes through Northwest Ohio, you may see me and my father there, along with many other rail fans. Now, wait, Mike, didn't you just say all these reasons to not chase 4014 on that day? Well, I did, but my intention is not to chase 4014. Instead of chasing, my plan is what I call leapfrogging. You see, this area of Northwest Ohio is primarily agricultural. The network of local and county roads make a neat grid as it works its way around the existing farmland. My father and I plan to use these roads to our advantage. First, we plan to arrive in the area very early, around sunrise, and scout out a good location to shoot 4014 somewhere around the Ohio-Indiana border. Get there early, set up, and wait for it to come to us. Then, after the big boy comes through and the parade of crazies has gone by, then we will seek out the nearest logical county road and bypass the whole parade on these roads going out, around, and trying to get in front of the line of cars to do the same thing again. Scout a location, park, and wait. Using this procedure, we hope that we would be able to shoot the big boy between 3 and 5 times between the Indiana line and Fostoria. We also plan to use the whistle stops at Continental and Fostoria to get ahead of the crowd. The one tricky part of our plan is that between the towns of Melrose and Oakwood, there are 2 river crossings, and 613 is the only option for crossing the rivers for many miles. So we will have to be in front of the crowds at this point, or we're pretty much sunk. Also, this plan is only going to work on the west side of Fostoria. Once the tracks get east of Fostoria, they turn northeast, and the NS tracks start to act as a diagonal against the grid of the local roads. There are no good road options that parallel the tracks for more than a mile or so in this entire stretch. So we may only catch the big boy once, or if we're lucky, twice, between Fostoria and Bellevue. But also by this time of the day, the train will be coming out of the afternoon sun, so photography is going to be a bit trickier anyway. So that's my plan. And if you're coming to Ohio to see 4014 on that day, be sure to plan ahead, expect huge crowds and suffocating traffic. You can also expect Ohio's finest troopers are going to be out in force to watch the roads that day, so be careful. Oh, and remember that along the route, these are small rural towns, so there's not a McDonald's or a gas station on every corner, so you'll have to plan ahead for gas, food, and restrooms. Most of all, stay safe, keep off the tracks, and Always be aware of your surroundings, not just what's in your viewfinder. Take only photos and leave only footprints. And who knows, maybe you'll run into a locomaniac like myself or my father that day. Until then, happy rail fanning.